Greetings, friends. We're going to set up some baby crested geckos today. I am going to start with a newborn baby, and then we're going to work our way up to a 10-gram baby. I think that the baby stage is the most important stage to get right, and I think that it's really important to keep it simple as we do it. Especially if we're looking at breeding these animals, we want this to be easily replicated over and over and over again. That way you know if you did something wrong or whatever. So let's get into it. We're going to walk through each step that I use, like as I'm, you know what? Let me just show you. Let's get into it. So I got a little thing of cork here. I also have some egg crate, and I have an uncut plant, and well, it was cut. This thing has been mauled at this point, but it still has a lot more pieces than some of these smaller ones. So when you look at setting up babies, obviously you need to look at like things that are a little bit smaller than what you would usually use. Pieces like this that can go in, you know, the biggest size of this box or some of the bigger boxes I'll show you later are great. You know, small pieces like this for the babies. I like to make sure everybody has a piece of cork because it does help with their shedding. When they get bigger, I also will add a pool noodle, like a horizontal pool noodle that I just shove in there a little bit. That is so that they can get up off the ground, and that's also important. Some things I want to point out about cork, because not all cork is created equal. First, this piece may look, oh, it's covered in fuzz, sorry. This piece may look tempting to you, right? It's a good looking piece of cork. You see this little hole in here? You know what you can't do? Get your hand inside of it. So if you can't get your hand inside of it, don't use it. You can easily break this apart. You can already see it's already kind of like breaking apart. You can use a pocket knife, an X-Acto knife. You could use a kitchen knife. There's no judgment here, but break it apart, because if you can't get your hand inside of there, that animal can get in there, and then what are you going to do to get it out? It's just not a good situation. So we want to stay away from that. Another thing we want to stay away from are pieces that have little holes like this in here. While this is very cute and would be great for like your isopod bin, because it's a cute little piece of cork. Same with this, it's a cute piece of cork. Nothing like this, even if it's a little tiny baby, I just don't like to risk the possibility that something could get stuck inside of something. So I don't use these. So when you're picking up your pieces of cork, when you get your things of cork, you know, you want to look for pieces that are just, that don't have any, you can't get inside of it. They're not, you know, they don't have anything weird on them, whatever. You also like this kind of wood, the chala wood. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This wood is okay, but that will mold sometimes. Or not really mold, but it just gets really yucky if you get it too wet. So I try to like stay away from this. I also try to stay away from this because look at all these holes. There's too many opportunities for something to happen that I don't want to happen. So we don't use anything with holes, and we don't use anything that we can't get our whole hand inside of. Egg crate is a great alternative if you are looking for some hides and stuff for babies. I love to add this in with the little babies. I just break it apart in pieces, and it is fine to get wet. You just have to watch it. I don't spray this directly. I just try to like kind of not spray this when I'm spraying, but that is a fine thing to add in there too. And then when we look at the plants, you know, this is just a plant that I bought in one of those like from the pet store plants, but you can also buy plants not from the pet store and clean them. When you buy the pet store plants, you know, sometimes you don't need all of it. You could just cut them. Just cut them. There's no reason not to do this. Also, for some of these like this, you can literally just pull the pieces off, and then I just throw these away. But you know, if you're trying to put together something for babies, sometimes you just need the individual ones just to kind of add them in there for places for the animal to climb. But I will show you inside of these enclosures with those things in there so you can get a better idea of what we're looking at. All right, so I have picked out a few babies that are gonna fit into our kind of our starting area here. So this is the first little container here. So it is small, as you can see, small. This baby that is in here was born in the middle of December. Just a little. And this baby, little lily white baby, barely even registers on my little scale because he's so little. 2 grams. So this is a 2-gram baby. So when they're born, they are a bit smaller than this. Not that much smaller, but they are a bit smaller than this. And they're little, right? So when we think about their house needs to be little. And for the sake of the video, I am gonna just take the food out so it doesn't just spill all over the place. But this, the piece of cork's gonna fall. That's it, okay? This is it. With the cup of food, this is it. This is the minimum. This is not fancy. This is not really anything. It's just very basic. But that is what we want. This is a 2-gram animal that is literally the size of my thumbnail. This animal can barely do what it needs to do beyond just surviving. I don't handle them a lot at this size. I don't mess with them a lot at this size. All I do is set them up and feed them and check them every day to make sure that they look good, that they're eating, that all that stuff is going well for them. Give them a little spray like I just did, which is only just a very little spray because they are small. And then that's it. When we get into the bigger enclosure, we have an animal that is a little bit bigger. So just to look at the lid, it's so dirty, oh my gosh. Look at the lid to see that's how big, this is how big it is, right? With obviously underneath, but this is the floor space on that enclosure. And then this is the next size baby that we're looking at, which is a little bit bigger. This baby is 3 grams. So that gram makes a pretty big difference. This animal looks a lot bigger than that other animal. It's not a big animal by any stretch of the imagination, but it still looks a lot bigger. Once they start getting to be not this size, but one size bigger is when I will start giving them a small water dish. I don't give it to the little babies because really it's just, they don't need it. They're going to drink from the water droplets that are on the side of the enclosure. I am in those enclosures every day. I have raised hundreds of babies, so you can disagree if you want to. This, great. I have a little plant in here, a little piece of cork, and then the food dish. That's it. That's it. And that's all they need. Now, you can give them more. You don't need to, but you can. And that's just kind of on your discretion. But we're talking about animals that were not born that long ago. The first one I showed you was born on 12/14. The second one I showed you was born on 10/7. These animals are little, and they're little babies. They don't need a elaborate enclosure. Now, when we start getting to something that's a little bit bigger, this is our floor space on this one, so it is a bit bigger of an enclosure. We got a bigger plant in here. We have a bigger piece of cork, which this one could even stand for even a bigger piece of cork than what's already in it, but this is the cork that I have in there. I like it because you can get underneath it. And then we have a slightly bigger baby. this baby is 5.5 grams. So it is, this one was born on 8/14. When you get into, once they hit past like 5 grams, I find that they grow exponentially faster at that point, and you'll see that, you know, the animals that have, you know, that start to gain weight and start to, you know, get past that like first couple grams, they really will explode in size. And you can see how much more active that animal is. So you want to give them a little bit more space and a little bit more stuff. But at the end of the day, and I realized I didn't show you, I don't think I picked up the other one. So I'll compare them all here. So we started with this one. That one was for the newborn. This one was when they were 1 gram bigger, so like a 3-ish gram baby. And then this one, we have our 5.5 gram baby in here. And that's it for those. So that's like the first step here. Now, usually you wouldn't buy a baby that was that small. I won't personally bring a baby to a reptile show, list a baby online to sell, anything like that until they're over. Really, I like to bring them at 10 grams. I do. A little less than 10, especially for like lily whites and stuff, that I can price them at a lower price point for someone to get into that project. But you probably won't have a lot of experience working with animals that are living in these enclosures unless you're breeding. That you might bring home an animal from a reptile show that's just tiny, and you may need to set up something like that. A alternative to these little fancy bins that everybody asks me where I get them, and they're so hard to get. I am inconsistently able to purchase them. I love them, but I'm inconsistently able to get them. And I can't get them in bulk nearly as easily as I used to be able to. So there's a lot of places and sites you can get a lot of these together. You can also just buy them individually. I know a couple people locally that sell them individually. They're not super expensive, but you can also DIY it. That's not hard to do. We're going to get into like some of the other things you need also, but I wanted to start with just the basics before we moved into the next thing. So that's where we're starting. Now we'll get on to the next part. I went through and I grabbed my next step up tub. I mean, technically I do sometimes use a shoebox between the last size I showed you and this size I'm about to show you. But for the sake of the video, this next tub is basically the same thing. And for you watching, this is the size tub you could use for pretty much a baby that you are going to buy at a reptile show. Not a baby if you're breeding, but a baby that you're going to buy at a reptile show, even if it's a small baby. Like, let's say you end up with one of those like littler ones like I showed you. As long as the baby is, you know, a solid couple grams, like 3-4 grams, you can put it in this next size enclosure. But this is the enclosure that I use as the next step. Usually I move them in here. I find that they need to, they're comfortable in here after 5 grams. Some of them I wait a little bit longer, but it just depends on how good of an eater they are, and you know how well they've grown just over time. Obviously some grow faster than others, but just to get a size idea, you know, this is a 10 gram animal. A little bit more than 10 grams actually, it's like 10.2, but it's close to exactly 10 as I could find. And this is a good size animal, and this is where this animal lives. This animal lives in here. So let me show you this bin right here. So it's a pretty good size bin, just so we can see the floor space again. It's like this. And then just to compare it to the other ones that we looked at, the one that is the next size, you know, smaller, is this. So if we're putting it on top of you know, the lid, it's a bit bigger. It's a little bit taller than this one. It's a little bit bigger than this one. As you can see, it's just about gradually moving them up. So this baby goes in here. There's a couple pieces of cork in here. A bigger plant. A lot of times I'll have pool noodles in here. Honestly, it is about to be pool noodle season again in Florida, where I can go buy them at the Dollar Tree where I go get them. I just am out right now, and I just can't get myself to like order them when I know I can literally go to the Dollar Tree and get them in the near future. So they're due for some new pool noodles. Some of them have noodles, some of them don't. And when I say the noodles, I literally just, in this enclosure, I take the noodle, I cut it a little bit longer than the enclosure, and I just kind of like stick it in there and it just sits. I usually cut it in half. That way it doesn't take up a whole lot of space, then they can't get inside of the hole. I said at the next size up, I use a water dish. This is it, a little tiny dish. Again, the same small food dish like we saw before. They all use the same dishes. They get fed every 3 days. So they don't, most of them at this size do not finish that food dish. Very few of them do. And if I notice that they finish their food dish, I give them more food the next week. But that is the last size bin when we're looking at bins. Now, when you at home are making a bin, obviously you can add more cork, more plants, more stuff. I try to add as much as I can reasonably add in here, but I don't overcrowd my bins. I need these bins to be easy to clean. I need these bins to be easy to find the animals in. And I have a lot of animals. And at the end of the day, they just don't necessarily need as much as what maybe the internet tells you that they do. They are fine in these. They're growing, and they're growing quickly, and they are progressing through life. So I must be doing something right. But they are, you know, these are fine. Like I said though, at your house, you can add more plants, you can add more stuff, but these bins are pretty easy to do. When we're looking at, you know, oh, well, that bin is not, you know, maybe as easy to find. Well, don't worry, because you can also just do it with a shoebox. And this one is a little bit dirty, I apologize, but a shoebox all the same. The holes in the shoebox are just from a soldering iron. So those are, it's a soldering iron is a welding tool, but I'm not using it for that. I'm using it to make holes in a plastic bin. And you just have to be cautious when you use it. I can do a later video if you're interested about using a soldering iron, because that's something that not everyone is familiar with. These ones already come with the holes in them, so another benefit, I suppose. And they have a hinged lid, even though I don't really use that feature, but it is there if you want to use it. I will put all these bins side by side in the next shot just to show you like the general progression of the sizes of these bins, and then you can get an idea of like what we're looking at when we say newborn to 10 gram, because there is a big difference. When we look at age of the animals, the first one I showed you, the newborn, because it wasn't a newborn, was born on 12/14, and this one was born on 4/9 of 2023. So there is, a pretty big span of ages. But that 5.5 gram one was born 8/14. So a couple months later, you're at 10 grams, and a couple more months later, they really explode in size after they get to 5 grams, like I said. But let me show you all these enclosures put together here, and then I'm gonna show you what we could do if we were putting together, let's say, a small Exoterra for something that is around Snowdrift's size, or maybe a little bit smaller than Snowdrift. Something that, if you were gonna buy a baby at a reptile show and you wanted to put it in a glass enclosure, how you would be able to set that up. But let me get to that in just a second. I gotta go get all my materials. Here's just a look of all of these side by side. Starting from the littlest, going to the biggest, and then here's my hand for scale. Just so you can see kind of the difference, because it's kind of hard to tell. Honestly, I think it's especially hard to tell how small these animals are until you literally have it on your hand. But yeah. This enclosure is what they call a nano tall exoterra. It is 8 by 8 by 12. And this is a really good enclosure if you are like going to a reptile show and you want to buy a baby, but you don't want to put them in a bin. This is exactly how I would tell you to set it up. Minus the eco earth at the bottom, I would tell you to use paper towel to start and then eventually transition to eco earth. But this is a perfect enclosure to start with. We have a pool noodle, that is our horizontal perch. We have a nice fake plant that gives a lot of cover. We have a piece of cork back here that also gives cover in the back. We have a ledge for the food. I think a ledge is, if you can do it, important. I know they can be hard to find or whatever, but it's worth the money. It makes it a lot easier for your animal when they are in this style of enclosure. You can always put the food dish on the ground if you need to, but that is what I would recommend. And then just to show you, the hard water stains are so bad here, but just to show you here, the back of it, so the animal can get up in that area there, and then you are in a position where the animal is able to hide from you, but you can still find them. Again, you can add more to this. You can add a bigger piece of cork if you want to. You can add a different plant if you want to. Remember that I am buying all of these like things I'm putting in here in bulk. So I buy a big bag of cork. I'm buying a large amount of plants. And each enclosure just kind of gets what I have. I'm not necessarily going out and specifically purchasing things for all of these enclosures every single time. Sometimes it's just I'm buying a lot of cork and then I'm using what I can. So there's obviously a better piece of cork that could go in here, but you know, a bigger one, whatever. But this at the end of the day is perfect for a small animal. I would say probably, you know, up into sub-adulthood, this is an okay enclosure. You know, it's not a small enclosure. Like, this is my hand for scale. This is not a small enclosure. There's obviously no animal in here. But this enclosure is fine for its intended audience of crested geckos, I suppose. But yeah, this, if you don't want to do a bin, is a great place to be. I hope that explained my process to you. And if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer anything that you want to know more like detailed about how I set up my baby crested geckos. I will be making more videos talking about how I set up babies at the next step of the journey. So babies that are 10 grams and a little bit, you know, up to 10 to 20 grams, let's say. And then what I do after that point. And then eventually how I set up my adults. Like I have said many times, there's a lot of ways to do this. There isn't just one right way. So if you are thinking, wow, I do this different, but everything seems to be going good for me, it's probably fine. Everybody can do this differently. There's not just one right way to do it. But the way that I do it has been working really well for me and has been giving me great results. All the animals that I am producing are healthy, thriving, they do really well, they eat, they grow, they do all the things they're supposed to do. And in my opinion, if it isn't broken, I'm not going to fix it. So I will be continuing to keep my babies the way that I've been keeping them. And if I find a way that I think is better, I'll give it a try. But I'm very happy using the system that I use now. Again, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help, more than happy to go through anything in more detail for you. Please reach out to me. And I will be posting below a shopping list if you are going to be going shopping. Like, let's say you're going to an expo, what you need to have ready if you are going to bring home a baby and you want to have a setup ready to go. Also, some things that you can be looking for that, you know, if you are going to the expo, things that you might want to buy there and pick up that you maybe can't get at your local pet store. Just if you are going to be getting into cresteds, getting into babies, getting into breeding, things like that. So I'll put some of my recommendations in a list down below and feel free to check that out. And I hope you have a great day. I hope that if you have any animals, you say hi to them for me, give them a little boop. And I will see you again real soon. Bye.